The Arizona Cardinals have many strengths on their roster. Far cry from what we've been used to. What are they? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's unbelievable. This is going into my 9th season. I guess the 8th season's not over yet, technically, so it's not officially my 9th season. The new league year hasn't started yet for 2025. Oh, and I haven't done this in a while. Hey, Roger Goodell. Hey, Raj. Can we start hyphenating the league year, please? Because the regular season is in 1 year and it ends, plus the playoffs and the Super Bowl, in the next year. If I ask you who won the 2008 Super Bowl, we're talking about a Super Bowl that was won with the regular season from the year prior. That's dumb. It's asinine. Get it fixed. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So I did a deep dive into Myles Garrett yesterday, as well as, the addition of Justin Fry and a mock draft by Matt Miller. The Myles Garrett thing is fascinating, and it's ongoing. You could throw in, you can throw in Max Crosby in that conversation, who would be more expensive. You can throw in Michael Parsons. I did a show with those three guys a few weeks back. It's not so much Myles Garrett. It is, but it's like in this conversation, it's the avatar of an elite pass rusher, whether it be interior defensive lineman, edge, or D-end. Adding that to a young, upstart, ready-to-rock Cardinals defense and seeing what happens when the Cardinals are on the precipice of what's as close to perpetual relevancy as you can have in the NFL. That's what it was about. And it's not an exercise now. It's not like they're 2 years away from being able to afford a contract like that. It's now. The future is now, cable guy. The future is now. I won't do it with the lisp, though. Okay, so today, the strengths. Tomorrow, the weaknesses of this roster. It's the end of the season for the Cardinals. And looking back, strengths did emerge. Okay. There were some unsures. There were some do it again. First is a coincidence. Second time is, it's like, okay, this is something that can be trusted for the future. And this is fascinating. So I'm going to start with the run game. Okay. The run game, but I will throw something else in with it. Okay. Because it's not an honorable mention. And it's also, in my opinion, not a strength yet. And that's something that needs to change immediately, or Drew Petzing's going to be out of a job, or Kyler Murray's going to be out of a job, or both. So the run game, let's start with James Conner, obviously. James Conner has been the heartbeat of this offense since signing the free agent. What was it, like $1.3 million 1-year deal a couple years back. He's got 2 extensions since then, and he's been the heart and soul of this offense. And it's something that he makes it look a lot easier than it is. He makes it, well, first of all, I 100% believe he's like 6'7". Like, there's no way that he stands like 5 or 6 inches taller than he is. It's crazy. Doesn't make any sense. And he seems to be still hitting his stride. And the beauty of James Conner is, which could be looked at as a downside in the grand scheme of things, but not now, is if you don't rely on your breakaway speed to be an elite back, and you can actually run between the tackles, and you can break tackles, and you're elusive, and you can still hit the corner, but burners aren't really your forte, you can play a lot longer in this league, because that was never really your thing. That wasn't what you banked on. And the candle doesn't burn out as quickly. And he could play, you could see him play for another 3 years. maybe at this level. I think a lot of it will have to do and be predicated upon Trey Benson and his development and emergence as a true 1-2 punch, a la the David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, even though the skill sets are completely different. But the run game has been the strength. It's been the metronome of this offense. So coupled with that, and the reason why this isn't an honorable mention, but because two of these, this player is so elite that you have to throw him in is Trey McBride. So I'm not throwing him into the run game, okay? I'm not doing that. But he needed to be put in the first segment, even though I don't think that the pass catchers are a strength of this team yet. I think that's pretty fair to say. Could be Kyler Murray, could not. I'm not doing Kyler Murray today. I'm doing non-quarterback position groups. So James Conner has been a vision. He was leaned on in Cliff Kingsbury's offense more than he should have been. Same with Drew Petzing last year. So I'm not saying this is knock on Cliff. Like, they've relied on James Conner too much because he's been so productive. But then you have a Seattle game coming out of a bye on the road in a game that you solidify yourself the top of the NFC West. James Conner doesn't have a good game, and the rest of the offense is in shambles. That's the 0-1 jump that needs to happen next season. And there's a lot of things that go into it. But Trey McBride has emerged as a tight end one. You could look to him next season as the best tight end in the NFL. You could. We'll see what George Kittle's like. He's a couple years younger than Travis Kelce. Brock Purdy has been absolute gunpowder for the missile that is George Kittle. It re-energized his career. He's been, and then Brandon Ayuk going out, and they've had injuries, Christian McCaffrey, etc. I mean, you throw Sam Laporta up there, but I would take Trey McBride over all of them. He's George Kittle Jr. He's George Kittle Jr. Catches everything, is a bowling ball, runs over everybody, has ridiculous verticals, and he's big and tall, and he blocks well. It's the same guy. And coupled with that, like, he's the main benefactor who is not a running back of the run game because the play action game has been so good to him. Trey McBride's always open. That's some of that scheme, and also some of that is just knowing where they aren't. The baseball adage, hit the ball where they aren't. Trey McBride just knows where they aren't, just like Travis Kelce's so good at. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. The offensive line, strength. Absolutely a strength. And I'll discuss why, in what ways, and how while it diminished the production after the bye week, the diminished production is still better than what we saw for the first couple of years with Kyler Murray in the league. And it needs to be discussed next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Here's the thing. There's only one football game left, man. And I know it's waning. It's fleeting. So don't you want to take advantage of the last game? There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least two player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Oh, the Cardinals. What could have been? Still, it's the Carolina game. Right in there. The frontal lobe, I think. It's still in there. That was it. Because Seattle did what they were supposed to do. They lost. And the Cardinals, it was there. And we'll talk about weaknesses tomorrow. Not doing that today. The offensive line was fantastic last year. By all accounts, from week 1 through week 17, on average, was well above average what was expected. And there were a couple question marks going into the season. One, would Paris Johnson Jr. seamlessly move over and transition over to his natural position of left tackle, which is the toughest position on offense to play in football, moving over from right tackle last year where he played pretty well as a rookie, didn't have, he played against some of the toughest fronts in football last year. Played pretty well, okay? He transitioned over more times than not. He's the left tackle for the future for the Cardinals. I think Monty Osborne knocked it out of the park, trading back, then trading back up, and there you have it. Yalta for a hold. Rinse and repeat. Probably, I mean, I know that it's geocentric, demographic, geocentric, not demographic, no, geocentric thought process. But he's, one of the top one of the most underrated centers in football. People that I know who were messaging me, very, very smart football people, were messaging about his availability before he signed a contract extension with the Cardinals. Like, is he going to go on the market? Is he going to be on the market? The dude's a baller. Will Hernandez, first 5 weeks before he got hurt, incredible. Kelvin Beachum, unsung hero of this roster. When Jonah Williams missed months this season after going down on the second series in week 1 after coming over signing a 2-year, $30+ million contract, Kelvin Beachum was great. All in all, Evan Brown was good. Like, I don't normally compare things to years past to now because it's kind of it's an act of futility in many senses because it doesn't really serve. It doesn't give the true barometer check of how a position group is playing in a certain year if you're comparing it obviously to a couple years back when it wasn't great. Okay, I'll kind of split it down the middle here. As I teased before the break, going into the bye, it was a top 10 offensive line, 100% in football. I don't care what the numbers say. Watch the games. Penalties were some of the lowest in football. Sack numbers were at least average. And they were wheeling and dealing. They were humming. The run game was humming. The pass game was humming. Everything was really in a group where you could trust that offensive line was not going to be the reason the Cardinals lost a football game. And here's what I'll compare. That was never the case. Kyler Murray's first 3 years in the league. First 4 years in the league, DJ Humphries was fine. They traded for Rodney Hudson, who played 18 good games in 2 years. However many, he was great when he was good, and then when he got hurt, it was Max Garcia with Sean Harlow, and it wasn't great at the center position, and everything went to shambles. Justin Pugh was pretty good. Okay, dealt with some injuries. Will Hernandez, it took him a minute to kind of congeal with the Cardinals' offensive line, and then since then he's been great. But in comparison, after the bye week, that offensive line performance was still better than a very large portion of offensive line production during Kyler Murray's first handful of years in the league. I think that's fair to say. And it's not a slight. It was a talent thing. It was an injury thing a lot of the time. So when you look at where they are now, they're in a much, much better position floor-wise to be able to expound upon what they produce this year, next year, and for years to come. So then it was, first of all, it was 100% of strength. It was a strength. When you look at the Cardinals and you look at the offensive line, they were the catalyst, especially during their win streak, that allowed Kyler Murray to make plays, that allowed huge holes for James Conner to run through for them on that month-long winning streak. And then while it tapered off after the bye week, and while that is kind of the trend for the Arizona Cardinals over the last handful of years, the offensive line at its worst was better than the best of the offensive line that we saw in years past. And that's a big deal. So now you tweak it, you draft a guard, you draft a tackle, whatever it is at 16, if you want. You can bring in, Monty Osborne isn't going to spend a whole bunch of money on the offensive line. He's not going to break the bank for one offensive lineman. He just won't. The offensive line is the most important unit in football. So if that is the idle talent level, IDLE, like if that's where they idle, from last year, and that's the foundation to build upon this year, the Cardinals are going to be in fantastic shape. They're going to be in fantastic shape. Look around the offense. Look around the offensive line. Look around the NFL and see how many bad offensive lines there are. If you have a bad offensive line, it doesn't matter the rest. It doesn't matter. You score points in this league. The quarterback's the most important position. If you can't protect the quarterback, ain't none of this going to work, whether it's Kyler Murray or otherwise. The defensive backs were an absolute vision. I could have put them as the number one strength, but neither of them are on offense. And the Cardinals' offense runs things, especially the run game and the offensive line, which is predicated upon, blocking for the run game and for Kyler Murray. I have a very, very sneaking suspicion that at the end of the 2025 season, the defensive back group will be the number one strength of the Cardinals. Very, very good floor raise last season. You had some pieces. This could legitimately be a top 3 or top 5 secondary in football. What did they do last year to make the grade on top three strengths of the Cardinals? We'll discuss it next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by the Game Time app. Looking for tickets to the next big event, maybe last-minute tickets to the big game next week? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right tickets at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price. Guaranteed. I just find this whole conversation fascinating because the Cardinals haven't had a lot of strengths for a while. They haven't. And it's something that when you start to see one beget another, and it's fun to watch, like organic growth. Not like organic growth. This is organic growth. This is the dictionary definition of organic growth. Young players drafted play well. Other young players drafted play well. They play well together. It bleeds into other positions because the other position groups don't have to overcompensate for the young players who don't know what the hell they're doing yet, and on and on and on. It's more so on the defense because what's the line I used to say? Defense is built on instinct and trust. That's what it is. Coaching, instinct and trust. And for, let's take Budda Baker, for example. For the majority of Budda Baker's career, he's had to overcompensate for DBs who didn't know what the hell they were doing at the NFL level. On average. A lot more Marco Wilsons than Garrett Williams is. A lot more, Justin Bethels than Garrett Williams is. than Antonio Cromartie's and Patrick Peterson, sure, in his heyday. But now when you look at the DBs, everybody plays their role. And the other guys you're obviously starting to build trust with those 4 guys specifically, with Garrett Williams, Max Melton, Budda Baker, and then Taylor-Demerson, who I'm assuming will supplant Jalen Thompson this season, unless they want to move him back into the slot. Like, I don't really know what they're going to do with Garrett Williams. If he's so good at the position he plays that they're not going to move him outside, it would bring in Matt Miller's draft where the Jim Thorpe Award winner out of Texas, taking him at 16, where he could be your more alpha CB1 on the outside. Like, either way, what the Cardinals did this year, without any sort of semblance of a pass rush, with a young secondary and a quote-unquote aging safety who most people were looking to get out of town after this season, not me. Not I, sir. And every day you'll know that. I didn't even waver. Extend him. Extend James Conner. What are we doing here? Have you not watched? Oh, he's this age. Think for yourself. Oh, he's this age. Think for yourself. Watch. Budda Baker, the best year of his career this year. Because he was able to just trust the DBs, trust the corners, and go play football in the way that only he and a couple other safeties play. So when you look at the DBs, without any sort of semblance of a pass rush, without any sort of semblance of any real help at all from the edge rusher group or the defensive line, for them to be able to produce the way that they did, it wasn't perfect. Max Melton got burned a couple times. Garrett Williams got burned. Budda Baker got burned bad. I can't remember what it was. It was either week 17 or week 18. More times than not, they were a set and forget. They're going to keep the Arizona Cardinals in games. And that is the biggest surprise of 2024, in my opinion, because we didn't really know about Garrett Williams. We knew what he was at Syracuse. We knew by people that I trusted, only dropped to the third round because he tore his ACL around Christmas, his last year of college. We knew that Budda Baker was still good. We didn't know what motor he had left. We didn't know what Max Melton was going to be. We didn't know what Sean Murphy-Bunting was going to be. We didn't know Jalen Thompson was going to still be on a rise. And we didn't know what Rav was going to be. The rookies. And it just started working a lot faster than expected. Because, let's be honest, if Max Melton was drafted to the Ravens, or Max Melton was drafted to the Steelers, or Max Melton went to Philly or something like that, it's like, okay, he's going to be good right away. Because they've got a pass rush. They got backers who kill people, like who just decapitate quarterbacks. They've got all the other insulation necessary for a young corner just to be able to play. He'll never have to line up against the ones. There's always going to be a good pass rush, so you won't have to cover for as long. The Cardinals didn't have any of that. So it was really a trial and error kind of thing where it's like, what do you got? And the beauty of it was, it wasn't as such on the complete opposite side of the spectrum where it was a Marco Wilson situation where it's like, all right, kid, go ahead. You're CB2. We have no other options because I don't know how to draft because I'm a terrible GM. It wasn't that either. It was that perfect kind of middle ground. It was the same with Marvin Harrison Jr., where obviously he was drafted 4th overall, so it was different, and he was a bona fide stud out of college, but so was Max Melton. Where it's like, you're not drafted to save the defense. And he was able just to play. So what we saw was Garrett Williams became that guy right away. Boop. Budda Baker emerged and showed what he still has and then some in the tank. And Max Melton played quite well for a good portion of this season, which is everything you want out of a young corner. So the DBs as a whole, I gushed over this year. No help on islands against some of the best, wide receivers in the league. It could have been so much worse than it was, and it was good in the process. It wasn't like they were 23rd, in production, and then, they could have been 32nd. No, this was a lot better proof of concept than anybody could have imagined going into the season, especially with Bijou Ojulari out, especially with them not really adding any sort of pass rushers this offseason, especially with Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones getting hurt and Darius Robinson being out for the first handful of months. It couldn't have gone better. It defied reason that it went that well. And if that's the jumping off point, Cardinals going to be in good shape. Strengths today, weaknesses tomorrow. I promise I won't be, that rough, but there are some weaknesses, obviously. And we'll discuss them tomorrow. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you tomorrow.